Welcome back to my kitchen. We are done with baseball, and so I'm excited to take you back here and talk about one of my favorite seasonal vegetables, which is sweet corn. I feel like this might surprise a few people because sweet corn is actually a starchy vegetable, and so we count it as a starch and not a vegetable when we're talking about it nutritionally. But in the summer, it is just the best thing, especially when fresh. Perhaps some of you have heard my story with sweet corn, which is very personal, but we started selling sweet corn when I was 12 years old, as I would call it I would say my dad conned me into this. For my 12th birthday, I got a swimming pool, one of those like above ground, like Walmart swimming pools. And I was super excited, obviously, because it's, July in Kansas. But the caveat was that we had to sell sweet corn in order to pay for it. So this was my parents' way of teaching us how to work and the importance of an education, which I definitely remembered. So I will drop a link to the whole story about sweet corn for you to read later. But my love of sweet corn goes deep because I learned so much about it when I was picking and selling it on the farm. So I am excited to show you some tips for how to pick out sweet corn, some different ways of preparing it, and also some ways that you can preserve it. It's easier than you think to preserve it if you would like to, but it's a little bit intimidating if you've never cut it off the cob. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you. I have some different ears of sweet corn here. This is actually from Scheifler Farms. We picked it a couple weeks ago. So here is our fresh sweet corn. And when you're picking this out, first of all, you should know that you should never buy sweet corn out of season because it's just not going to taste as good. So buy it fresh in season in the summer from a local market. It is perfect when it's fresh, and there is a time limit to how long it's good. It'll stay good in the husk for a couple of weeks. If you shuck it, it is going to go bad quicker. And so if you are gonna keep it for a while, then make sure you keep it in the husk, and that's gonna keep it protected. When you pick it out from the store, you don't want to peel back that shuck, because like I said, anytime that you open that up, now you're exposing those delicious little kernels to air, and they're gonna dry out. So if you do happen to peek at the corn or see that, make sure you close that back up and keep that as tight as possible. So when you're trying to decide if this is a good ear of corn or not, you can tell that it's ready because the tassels will be brown. So anything you're finding in the grocery store at the market is going to be ripe. You don't have to worry about that. And then to tell if it's good below, you can simply feel it. So you're just feeling around if there's any blank spots, if there's any places that if you feel something that's blank or that's a little bit squishy, that might mean that it didn't pollinate well or that you're missing some kernels. It's not that it's bad, but those are the things to watch out for. So store it in the husk and make sure you keep it protected with that shuck. So to cook it, you can either boil it after it's shucked, or you can also grill it. If you're grilling it, you'll want to make sure to soak your corn. So you'll put it in the water, in the shuck, in the husk, and soak it for 30 minutes to an hour just to make sure that you have it nice and wet so that none of those leaves catch fire, because they will if they're on the grill. And then you'll want to just trim any of those extra little pieces off. To shuck it, you want to be a little bit careful. I'm sure most people have done this before, but I always recommend to shuck it in about three pieces. So you'll pull it all the way down. If you shuck this in 2 pieces, then you're likely to bruise the corn. So corn, all the kernels are really sensitive. If you throw them around, if you push too hard with your hands, and you'll break some of those kernels, and it won't be as good. So you'll just take from the top, peel it down, and then just remove any of those little extra tassels. So you're maybe noticing that the ear of corn looks a little bit weird. That's because it hasn't pollinated correctly, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with the corn. You just don't get as many kernels. You can see also these are what we call blanks, and that means that those kernels didn't happen to pollinate. It's just because one of these tassels didn't get enough pollen, but again, there's nothing wrong with the corn there. If you find that there's a little worm at the end of your corn, no big deal, just cut it off. We use this method. We go ding, 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 and we chop it off. Awesome. Now you have no worm. It's super beautiful, and this is ready to go into boiling water. If you're cooking it, if you're gonna boil it, you wanna boil it about 8 minutes is perfect. If you're blanching it to freeze, you only need to blanch it about 2 to 3 minutes, and then immediately after you pull it from the water, stick that hot ear of corn into an ice bath, and that'll stop it from cooking, and then you can put it in whatever you're using to freeze it. So I wanted to go over really quickly how to cut off an ear of corn. So this is actually a leftover ear of corn from a couple days ago. We grilled it, and so I went ahead and shucked it just so you can see how to do this. So when you cut off ears of corn, you're gonna stand them up on edge. I'm gonna use a chef's knife. You can use any larger knife, and you're just gonna cut down the edge of that cob, and you want to cut as close as possible. If you cut it too close, you can kind of see if I cut it too close, the edge there, you can see that there's a little piece of the cob, so that's actually going to be more fibrous-y and tough to chew, so you don't want to cut too close. But of course, if you cut too far away, then you're not getting all of the corn. So it's a delicate balance. If you feel like you missed some, you can always go back and do it again. There's nothing wrong with that. So this is the method you would use if you are cutting off the corn and going to freeze it. I grew up freezing this in Ziploc bags, but one thing we know about plastic is that especially when it changes temperature from hot to cold, it'll leach more of the chemicals from the plastic. So this year I used reusable mason jars and just stuck that frozen blanched corn that we cut off the cold blanched corn that we cut off the cob directly into the jars. I didn't fill it to the top, so it didn't have any problem, no breakage, no problem with the glass jars, but that's what we are doing this year. I would love to know how you guys preserve your food. So another common way that you could do is to use reusable silicone bags. Those are amazing. I get them from Net Zero, but those are really, they're similar to Ziploc bags, but they're a little sturdier and made out of silicone and not plastic. So with that being said, now that we have an idea of how to prepare the corn, the last thing I want to leave you with is a little bit of the nutrition information, because working in an endocrinology clinic for many years and being a diabetes educator, I heard from many people that they missed corn so much that they weren't able to have corn. And that's not true, actually. The important thing to know is that corn is more like a grain. If you don't pick fresh sweet corn and let it completely mature on the plant, those kernels will become hard, and it's very similar to field corn, which we would feed to animals. So keep in mind that it is similar to a grain nutritionally in that aspect, but it's also like a whole grain. So there is actually a lot of fiber in corn, and so when we think about the nutrition value, we're going to treat it as a starchy vegetable, as a starch on your plate. So you wouldn't want to count it as like the salad or the cucumbers or those sorts of vegetables, because they don't have as many carbohydrates. Corn is more similar to a potato, but it does have a ton of fiber, and it also has some B vitamins. So it's not completely without value, but you just want to be mindful of how much you're eating. So a 6-inch cob has about 15 grams of carbohydrates, or you use the half cup rule is what I call it, that a half cup of corn has about 15 grams of carbohydrates. So if you're thinking about insulin dosing, that's how you would count that. Otherwise, if you're enjoying it, I always encourage you to enjoy it in moderation, especially when it's seasonal. This is a perfect time of year to do it. And you know, eat real food, eat good food. So like I said, I would love to hear other ways that you guys prepare this. We've been eating it not just on the cob, but also in some corn fritters and some corn chowder, in a lot of different ways this year. So drop a comment with your favorite way to eat your sweet corn, or the farm that you get it from. I hope you enjoy it, and we will catch you all next week. Take care, guys.